Gentlemen, good morning. Hey, I just want to take a quick minute before I bring up Father Ezaki. I was blessed this last couple of years working with Father Ezaki. He'll never talk to you about it because he's a very humble man, but we worked together on building a website. And it's listed with about 150 writings. And if you get a chance, check it out. It's called apologyanalogy.com. Now, you'll never be able to write that down, but if you look in your book on page 23, it's written right there. So tear it out when you're done, take it home, check it out. His writings are fantastic. If you ever heard him give a homily, you can actually hear him speaking when you read the homily. So let's get started. Father Ezaki was born in Allentown, one of 7 children, the 4th child to Dr. Toshio and Mary. Legally blind from birth, Father Ezaki attended area schools, and he was graduated from William Allen High School and holds degrees from Moravian College, Harvard Divinity School, and St. Charles Seminary. Father Ezaki was ordained to the priesthood in 1988. His first year as priest was at St. Peter's Church in Copley. Then for the next 24 years, he resided at Notre Dame of Bethlehem Rectory and taught theology to sophomores at Bethlehem Catholic High School. For 3 years, Father Ezaki was the assistant pastor at the cathedral in Allentown. And most recently, he is the assistant pastor at St. James Church in Easton. It gives me great pleasure, and men, please join me in welcoming Father Bernard Ezaki. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here. My friend Michael Tully left out some important facts about my biography. He neglected to tell you that I was an ugly kid. Let me tell you, I was an ugly kid. Hey, I was so ugly, Mom had morning sickness after I was born. I said to Pop, Pop, take me to the zoo. He said, if they want you, they'll come and get you. As a teenager, hey, I had so much acne, only blind people could read my face. Yes, I'm really honored. I'm honored to be here. It's just so great. I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk to you. Now, I won't promise that what I'm going to say to you today will be at all informative, but I will strive at least to be entertaining. Okay, the ostensible title of the talk I'm about to give is Sinfulness, the Challenges Men Face in Living in the Spirit. The real title is A Blind Man Looks at Pornography. Now, years ago, I was attending a men's conference right here at DeSales University, listening to one of my favorite speakers, Dr. Peter Kloponis. And Dr. Kloponis asked us in the audience to indicate by a show of hands how many of us had never looked at pornography. My hand went up. Hey, they all started laughing at me. I never get any respect. Don't worry, I won't ask the same question anyway, because I wouldn't be able to see your hands anyway. Now, that incident at DeSales was for me, in a metaphorical sense, an eye-opening experience. I used to feel so sorry for myself at not being able to see well, but I realized then that maybe being legally blind isn't all that bad after all. Hey, for me, walking down a beach today is as innocent an experience as it was when I was 5 years old. And my biggest concern is not stepping on a seashell, And when you stop to think of it, this is a great time in human history to be blind. There are so many rotten things out there that I can't see, and yet there are so many devices and inventions to help people like me who have problems with vision. I mean, an iPhone, it's great that I could just dictate my text messages and emails. What a wonderful thing. I love you, Siri. I need lots of affirmation from Siri. Siri, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?
You, my friend, are the fairest of all.
What a great time to have poor vision. Thank you, Jesus. I'm so grateful, Mother. But remember, blindness is not a virtue. For me, it might be more like a crutch. Having eyesight is the challenge, and anyone who uses his vision well has my profound respect. God does not give sharp knives to children, but he has given most of you the double-edged sword of good vision. The task he sets before you apparently requires good eyesight, and this task is so vital for you and for the kingdom of God that God is willing to give you good eyesight, even though you run the risk of losing your salvation. Good eyesight for me would most likely be my condemnation to HE double hockey sticks. But God intends you to have good eyesight in order to be a blessing for the world. Use your eyes well. So while you might not get much out of what I have to say today, I want you to know, gentlemen, you have my prayers and most profound respect and admiration. You are better men than I am, Gunga Din. So let me begin with a true story. Maybe you've heard me say this. This is one of my favorite stories. Some years ago, an experienced teaching sister at Immaculate Conception Elementary School right here in Allentown stood before her second grade class on the first day of school. Boys and girls, the sister announced, my name is Sister Asunta. And with that, she wrote her name on the blackboard in huge letters. A, S, S, U, N, T, A. Now, Monsignor John McCann, who was then Father McCann, the parish priest of the Immaculate Conception, he happened to be at that very moment walking down the open classroom door, and he was just in time to hear what came next. All right, children, continued Sister Asunta, who can tell me what three-letter word you see in my name? At once, Father McCann saw a whole forest full of hands, spring up from the eager students. Does this woman have any idea what she's doing, he thought to himself. But before he could do or say anything, Sister Asunta had called on a little girl in the front row. Sister, piped the earnest student, that's easy. I see the word sun, S-U-N. Father John, he stood dumbfounded by his own inability to perceive the obvious. That's not the word I saw, he later admitted when recounting the story to me. And so here's my question. Is it possible for someone who is no longer innocent, is it possible for someone who is no longer innocent to regain the ability to see the sun in Asunta? To be more blunt, is it possible to purify a mind once it has been sullied? In the early part of last month, I attended a clergy intensive workshop sponsored by an organization called Integrity Restored. One of the presenters showed us a segment from the educational science series Smarter Every Day on YouTube, starring engineer Destin Sandlin. It's a great series. I came away from that workshop hooked on Smarter Every Day. It's a great science series. The segment, and you can watch this particular segment for yourself on YouTube, it's called The Backwards Brain Bicycle. So one of Destin's friends, a welder by the name of Barney, made him a backwards bicycle. Turn the handlebars to the left and the wheel goes to the right. Turn the handlebars to the right and the wheel goes to the left. Destin, who learned how to ride a normal bicycle when he was a kid like the rest of us, he took it as a personal challenge to master the backwards bike. No easy matter. After practicing 5 minutes a day for 8 months, something clicked into his brain and he was able to do it. The only problem was that when Destin went back to trying to ride a normal bike, he said he found it to be one of the most frustrating moments in his life. But here's the good news. After 20 minutes of intense practicing, something again clicked in his brain, and he was able to go back to riding the old bicycle again. Now, neurologist Donald L. Hilton tells us that pornography creates very strong neurological pathways in the brain. And I suppose it's like riding a backwards bicycle. So maybe there is a way out of pornography and back to innocence. But as Destin Sandlin suggests, the way back probably involves time, concentration, and effort. When I was in college, we were required to memorize lines in my Latin class. We had to memorize lines from Book 6 of Virgil's Aeneid. That's the book where he goes down, Aeneas goes down into hell. And I can still remember the lines. Faculus descensus averno, noctes atque dies patet atrianum audites, sed revocare gradum superasque vaderat auras, hoc opus hic labor est. Hey, now you know why I never got married. Translation, easy is the descent into hell. Night and day yawns wide dark Pluto's door. But to retrace one's steps and escape to the upper air, this is work. This is labor. Hoc opus hic labor est. It's easy to fall into sin or fall into a bad habit, but it takes work to climb out again. St. Francis de Sales, what a great place to quote St. Francis de Sales. He says, sin arrives on horseback and leaves on foot. It's easy to acquire a sin, but it's tough to get rid of one or a habit. In his book, entitled St. Francis of Assisi, G.K. Chesterton, he points out that the pagans of the late Roman Empire had thoroughly sexualized nature. In his picturesque way of speaking, he said that the garden sundial had given way to a phallus. What a great way of saying it. The garden sundial had given way to a phallus. Only after the West had undergone the purgation, Chesterton says, only after the West had undergone the purgation of the early Middle Ages could the West produce a figure like St. Francis, who once again endowed the world of nature with innocent joy, brother, son, Sister Moon. Again, it is possible spontaneously to see sun in Assunta, but only after a period of intense struggle and work. What does this struggle look like? Here is one of my favorite passages of Scripture. This is Luke chapter 11, verses 24 through 26. It always comes up on a weekday, a Friday, during one of those weeks in October. Jesus says, when an unclean spirit goes out of someone, it roams through arid regions searching for rest, but finding none, it says, I shall return to my home from which I came. But upon returning, it finds it swept clean and put in order. Then it goes and brings back 7 other spirits, more wicked than itself, who move in and dwell there. And the last condition of the man is worse than the first. Okay, when the demon returns to its former domicile, how does it find it? Swept and in order, like an empty hotel room, waiting for an occupant. And that's the problem. The reason the demon is able to return, move back in, bring 7 other demons worse than itself, the reason the demon is able to occupy the premises is that there's no one in residence. Imagine what would happen if the demon came knocking and Jesus answered the door. Hey, the devil would not be able to move in. Here's the point. In order to turn away from sin, I don't care what sin it is, and find the way back to virtue, we need more than an aversio a peccato, a turning away from sin. We also need a conversio ad Deum, a turning toward God. A turning away from sin without a simultaneous embracing of the good is a half-hearted measure. It's like stopping your antibiotics halfway through the series. You could end up worse than before. You know, it's not uncommon, I thought I saw everything teaching high school, but it's not uncommon for a person to come to the rectory nowadays and confide that he is experiencing in his home what he suspects to be demonic activity. Beds shaking, unexplained laughter, objects out of place, drafts of cold air that cause goosebumps. And I could very easily go to the home, say some prayers, sprinkle holy water. But if the person is not willing to turn away from sin and embrace Christ, I might only be making matters worse. It's not enough to turn away from sin. We must also turn towards Christ. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Hey, Father, I can't get the pictures out of my head. They pop into my mind at the strangest times. I think they're there to stay. Well, maybe you're right. I used to tell my students all the time, there's no delete button on your brain. The bad pictures you put into your head will have to come out through prayer, penance, or purgatory. But think of it this way. Suppose you and your family were given the opportunity to live in a beautiful home, free of charge. No rent, no taxes, no utilities to pay for, no strings attached except for one. There are raunchy pictures all over the walls, and you are forbidden under threat of eviction to take down any of the pictures. What are you going to do? You can't afford to pass up such a great deal. As a matter of fact, you can't afford to live anywhere else. Well, if you can't take down any of the pictures, at the very least, you can cover them over with better pictures. There is nothing in your agreement with your landlord that forbids you to cover the pictures. Aren't we in a similar situation when it comes to our minds? We not We might not be able to get rid of those terrible pictures in our heads, but at least we can cover them over. Bishop Sheen says, you can't drive evil out, but you can crowd it out. I just got this idea I used to tell my students a joke every day. I used to say, I need a penny, I need a nickel and a quarter. I need a penny, a nickel, and a quarter. Anybody got a penny, a nickel, a quarter? It just keeps penny, nickel, quarter. And finally, the kid produces, one of the kids will produce a penny, a nickel, a quarter. Before the conference, I asked for a penny, and what's that? I never carry a penny, but this is a penny. So here's the question. Bob's mother has 3 children, and the first is named Penny, and I'm holding up this penny here. Right? The first is named Penny. The second child is named Nicky. I'm holding up the nickel here. And the third child, as I pick up the quarter, the third child is Bob. I told you, Bob's mother has 3 kids. The first is Penny. The second is Nicky. And the third is Bob. Do you see how, as the innkeeper in The Lord of the Rings says, how one thought just drives out the other? One thought can easily drive out another. Thoughts can be crowded out of your head. At least, if not driven out, at least crowded out. You thought the whole notion of Bob was just crowded right out of your head by the other images that you saw. Try that. That's a great. I asked the same question to my therapist, and he couldn't get the joke. And they think I'm joking. Now, not to belabor the point, but here is a gem that you may have heard. It's entitled Two Wolves. W-O-L, wolf, the plural of wolf. I didn't want to spell it because I'm not sure I'd get it right. Right? Two wolves. One evening, an elderly Cherokee brave told his grandson about a battle that goes on inside people. He said, "My son, the battle is between 2 wolves inside us all. One wolf is evil. It is anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other wolf is good. It is joy, peace, love, serenity, hope, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith." And the grandson thought about this for a minute and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf wins?" And the old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." The one you feed. So you see, it's not simply a matter of starving the bad wolf. We must also feed the good wolf. The thoughts we put into our heads, the pictures we put into our minds are important. They matter. And so here are some great quotations I got from a great book entitled How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. We're all familiar with his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, but Dale Carnegie wrote another book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. It is well worth reading. It's not the kind of book that you can just read in one sitting. You have to take it in small doses because it has lots of wisdom in it. So here are some quotes from Dale Carnegie's book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Here we go. Ralph Waldo Emerson. "A man is what he thinks about all day long." A man is what he thinks about all day long. Hey, what am I thinking about all day long? How about Emperor Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor? He said, "Our life is what our thoughts make it. Our life is what our thoughts make it. Whatever we're thinking, that becomes our life. And my favorite quote by Reverend Norman Vincent Peale, "You are not what you think you are, but what you think you are." You are not what you think you are, but what you think you are. Now, don't get me wrong. When it comes to overcoming pornography or any kind of addiction or sin, I am not in any way denigrating the importance of internet filters, support groups, pastoral counseling, therapy, and certainly not confession. I'm simply saying that the thoughts and pictures we put into our heads definitely affect us for good or for evil, whether we like it or not. It's just the way it is. I know for a fact that whatever I happen to be seeing on TV, I take out my little monocular, whatever I happen to be watching on TV, whatever I look at is going to be with me the following day, whether I like it or not. I remember, for example, the first time I ever saw the movie Galaxy Quest, starring Tim Allen. I thought it was one of the funniest films I had ever seen. I couldn't stop laughing. It's a great movie, Galaxy Quest, but with Tim Allen. But you know, the whole next day, that movie kept breaking into my thoughts at the oddest moments. It even intruded into my rosary. For crying out loud, I'm trying to meditate on the sorrowful mysteries of the most holy rosary of the Blessed Virgin Mary, but all I could think of was aliens, Tim Allen, Sigourney Weaver, and Tony Shalhoub. And we've all had that experience, right? So we have to put that experience to our advantage. Deliberately go out of our way to put good things into our heads. Galaxy Quest, don't misunderstand. It's a great movie. One of my favorites. I'd recommend it to anyone. I just did to you. But just because I saw it one day meant that it stayed with me all the next. So we need to put positive thoughts and images into our heads. They don't necessarily need to be explicitly religious thoughts and images. They simply have to be at least wholesome. So go ahead and watch the movie Galaxy Quest. If you are a golf fan, try to find this movie. It's one of my favorite movies. It was recommended to me by my best friend, God rest his soul, Father David Fick. David loved golf, and he recommended this great movie. It's called Bat 21, B-A-T 21, with Gene Hackman and Danny Glover. Gene Hackman plays a pilot in Vietnam who gets shot down behind, or at least in neutral territory. And the Viet Cong are listening to all of the radio transmissions that Danny and Gene Hackman are making with one another. It's a great movie. I love the movie BAT 21. If you like golf, you'll like that movie. Or if you have a comical bent, go watch the movie The Princess Bride. That's one of my favorite movies. I don't know how many of you have ever seen that movie. I think it's a riot. We had a poor kid from Spain in our school at Bethlehem Catholic. His name was Inigo, and we kept a poor kid. Anybody who's ever seen that movie, we'd all go up to him and go, "I am Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." It's a great movie, The Princess Bride. I know some of you have seen it. Watch the Civil War or the baseball documentaries by Ken Burns. Wowee. Read an inspiring book like Joan of Arc by Mark Twain. Actually, he said it was his best book, Joan of Arc by Mark Twain. It is awesome. It's one of my favorite books. Or read In My Hands by Irene Gut-Opdyke. That's a book where a Polish girl rescues Jews from the Nazis. It is a real page-turner. Once you pick it up, you will not be able to put it down. It's a true story. It's a happy story because, in the end, she comes out all right. Read the book The Boys in the Boat by Daniel Brown. That's an awesome book. It's about, well, how a bunch of children, the sons of dock workers and loggers in Washington State, how they formed a crew team and how they went on to beat not only the American Ivy Leagues, not only the English crew teams from all those great colleges over there, universities, but they went on to the 1936 Olympics and they beat the Nazis. Boy, oh boy, if you want a book that will make you to be proud that you're American, I recommend The Boys in the Boat by Daniel Brown. One lesson from the book is that if we're going to make it anywhere in life, we have to pull together. We're all in the same boat, we in the United States, and if we want to make progress, we have to pull together. I wish all of our politicians would read that book, The Boys in the Boat by Daniel Brown. What a great book. Give it to your favorite politician. I understand there's a children's version too that their kids are reading in St. James Elementary School. Well, hey, watch reruns of the Carol Burnett Show. Go online and watch them. I love that scene with Harvey Korman and Tim Conway, the dentist chair. Great scene. And we've all watched it. Why not? Or Carol Burnett as Scarlett O'Hara. Oh, I just found this hanging in the window. So those are great. Wowee, you could even, if you really go online, and there's a lot of good things out there. Anything, as long as it's wholesome. We do best, however, if we contemplate the lives of the saints. Now, the problem with the Catholic Church right now is that the average go-to-Sunday Catholic never hears about the saints, or hardly ever, because we're always talking about the Sunday readings. And the Sundays bump off all the feast days. I couldn't talk about St. Augustine this year because, well, his feast was on a Sunday. It got bumped off. So the only Catholics who really consistently might hear about the saints by going to Mass are those who go to Mass on weekdays. And so there's a real need for us to learn about the saints because each saint is kind of, and this is not my idea, I think it comes from Pope Pius XI. Each saint, well, I'll get to that. I'll get to that. Anyway, nothing says, I wish I could do this in a German accent, but I don't have the heart. Nothing says Pope Benedict XVI can bring us into close contact with this beauty of Christ himself other than the world of beauty created by faith and light that shines out from the faces of the saints, through whom his own light becomes visible. The saints, the Holy Father saying, Pope Benedict, they make the light of Christ visible to us. And so here, let me recommend, I'm trying to push books. Let me recommend, because TV will make you stupid, right? Watch TV and you'll become stupid, right? If you forget everything I told you today, remember, watch TV and you'll become stupid. If you have to watch a great movie, watch the Ben Carson story, right? His mom made him and his brother read books, limited their TV, made them write a book report. It didn't matter that she couldn't read. They didn't know that. But she wanted her sons to read. And so Ben Carson, what a great intellect that guy is because he limited his intake of television. Watch TV and you'll become stupid. Read a book. And here's a great book. This book is by a guy named Thomas J. Crawwell. It's called Saints Behaving Badly. What a great book. Saints Behaving Badly. The subtitle, The Cutthroats, Crooks, Trollops, Con Men, and Devil Worshippers Who Became Saints. Wow, what a great title, huh? I bet you there's a little bit of all of us in here. This book goes out of its way to give us realistic and readable, but also hopeful portraits of the lives of many saints who did not start out with the most sterling characters. Right? So this is a great book. Saints Behaving Badly. Okay, this book actually gives hope to us all. And here are some of the chapter titles. Saint Matthew, extortionist. Saint Callistus, one of our popes, embezzler. Saint Augustine, heretic and playboy. Saint Patrick, worshiper of false gods. Saint Olga, mass murderer. Hey, but you want to get the book just to read about her. Saint Vladimir, fratricide, rapist, and practitioner of human sacrifice. Saint Thomas Becket, hedonist. Saint Margaret of Cortona, rich man's mistress. This is a great book. I think this would be an excellent book to give to some kid going off to college. I'm not joking. No, we want more vocations. We have to pray for more vocations. Why don't we hear more intentions in our prayers of the faithful for vocations? But we also have to put into the hands of young people inspiring stuff like this that anybody could read. This is a riot, you know? And so even if someone were to find a book like this, they won't make fun of you for reading it. I think it's a great book. Saints Behaving Badly. And in this context, it might also be good for us to contemplate the life of someone who has not yet been declared a saint, but who probably ought to be. And I'm talking about Alessandro Serenelli. Some of you know who he is. He, induced by pornography, this is way back around 1900. You could get pornography in 1900. Go down to the local train station and you'll find stuff, right? So this guy induced by reading pornography, good old Alessandro, at age 19, attempted to rape and then killed or fatally wounded St. Maria Goretti by stabbing her 14 times. Now, sentenced to 30 years in prison, Alessandro had a profound conversion. They said when he first went in, he was howling like a wolf. And then after 3 years in prison, he had a profound conversion experience. He had a dream in which he saw St. Maria Goretti in a garden, and she handed him 14 flowers, one for each knife wound. And after his release, he served the rest of his 27 years. After his release, Alessandro became a Capuchin lay brother. Capuchin lay brother. Think of Alessandro every time you have a cup of cappuccino. Right? That's where it gets its name. It gets its name from the brown color of the Capuchin friars. So every time you have a cup of cappuccino, think of Alessandro Serenelli, an inspiring man. He lived a holy life as a gardener for the rest of his life. He was even present when Maria Goretti was canonized, and he heard the Pope refer to him, his former self, in the most unflattering terms. Everybody else was happy. He was weeping, probably out of sorrow and out of joy. I am told, I'm not exactly sure if this is true, that one of his last words were, before he died, was, "Beware of pornography." This is around, I think he died at the age of 60, so there it is. Some people think he ought to be declared patron saint of porn addicts. Hey. Now, I know it's a little more complicated than that. I am not a doctor, but I know it's more complicated than that. Addicts who stop using live in a gray fog because their brain has forgotten how to make dopamine without the object of addiction. You take away the alcohol, the pornography, and the brain can't make the dopamine anymore. Whether it be drugs, alcohol, pornography, but with time and patience, the brain readjusts. And I suppose, on a larger scale, it's like what happens on a small scale every day when we're used to eating junk food and we switch over to good stuff. Once when I was in seminary, my friend Jim Oliver, now Father James Oliver, caught me shoving at least one Krispy Kreme donut into my mouth. "Bernie," he said, "if you start eating what's healthy for you, after a while, Even bread will taste sweet. To the moon, Jim. Bam, zoom. But you know, he's right. Over time, the brain readjusts itself. And so let me conclude with one more story. And maybe, I know some of you have heard this before. I love this story. It's a true story. I call this Joyce Makes a Choice. My friend Joyce had been working as a chaplain at the state hospital for the mentally ill here in Allentown. And when the staff got the word that the facility would be closing, it was a gradual process, and every effort was made to find other places for the staff, the employees, and residents to work and live. Joyce was one of the last employees to leave the hospital, and as patients and staff relocated, the number of those who remained slowly dwindled until at last everybody, a few doctors, some nurses, patients, and Joyce, they could fit in one small unit. The last few patients were, for the most part, the ones that were the most difficult to handle. And thus finding accommodations for them proved to be somewhat of a challenge. In addition, out of sheer necessity, staff members began performing one another's duties. For example, doctors and Joyce began preparing and serving meals, as well as cleaning bedpans. And to make matters worse, as one section after another of the hospital closed down, workers from other state institutions naturally began plundering whatever materials and equipment they needed for their respective institutions. In the end, would you believe, they even carried off the last TV set. Now, you would think that all of this would go from making frayed nerves, constant irritability, and short tempers. But that's not what happened. And here's why. Desperate for some sort of entertainment, Joyce brought in her own VCR and television monitor, along with countless episodes of Touched by an Angel, the CBS series starring Rona Downey as an angel named Monica, and Della Reese as her celestial supervisor, Tess. Now, the television show, as you may remember, told how heavenly beings conveyed messages of divine comfort and hope to people really in need of providential guidance and assistance. Oh yeah, you can be sure, when Joyce brought in those videos, there was some initial skepticism, laughing on the part of the staff, scoffing, but before long, nurses, patients, and even the doctors, Joyce told me, would be sitting down together on an afternoon to watch the angelic adventures of Monica and Tess. There were times when everyone in the room, Joyce told me, they'd be crying, laughing together, or hugging one another. And the most dramatic changes, the dramatic transformations took place in the day-to-day lives of the patients. Deprived of their steady fare of soap operas, MTV, and South Park, and sustained by a wholesome diet of inspiration and inspirational entertainment, the residents began to grow calmer, more docile, and yes, even saner. So I cannot help but think of St. Paul's advice to the church at Philippi. And this is Philippians chapter 4, verses 8 and 9. I love these verses so much that way back in college, I even memorized them in De cetero fratres, quae cumque sunt vera, quae cumque pudica, quae cumque justa, quae cumque sancta, quae cumque amabilia, quae cumque bone fame, si qua virtus, si qua laus haec cogitate, quae et dedicistis et accepistis et audistis et vidistis in me haec agite, et Deus pacis erit vobiscum. For the rest, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever honorable, whatever just, whatever holy, whatever lovable, whatever of good repute, if there be any virtue, if anything worthy of praise, think upon these things. And what you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, these things practice. And the God of peace will be with you. So the apostle is clearly saying that the ideas and images we habitually put into our brains will have an effect on our personality and character. If we take in the world's junk, we'll produce junk. And here, by the way, is another great book. It's called Plunging Pornography, a Catholic bathroom book. Plunging Pornography, a Catholic bathroom book. It's got a cartoon figure on the front sitting on a toilet. It's the kind of book that parents should read and then place in the bathroom for their teenage kids to pick up. Boy, this is very hard to resist. The author, D.J. Huneman, a paramedic, he starts out a little snarky, but he gives young readers and adults everything we need to know about the dangers of pornography, and before you know it, he's talking about the rosary, the chaplet of divine mercy, fasting. An awesome book. Buy it from Amazon. But it's well worth it. Plunging Pornography, a Catholic bathroom book. Okay, as I was saying, if we take in the world's junk, we will produce junk. And here on page 26, the author makes this statement. Nearly 90% of rapists regularly view porn, and the majority of them admit to acting out the pornography they see. Again, if we take in the world's junk, we'll produce junk. Why then do so many of us insist on wallowing in what is at the very best stupid and at the very worst immoral? If, on the other hand, we make it a habit to ponder that which is good and wholesome, to feed the good wolf, then we will become like that which we ponder all day. A man is what he thinks about all day. And there is, says St. Paul, an additional bonus. Et Deus pacis edit vobiscum. And the God of peace will be with you. I don't know about you, but that's a good enough reason for me. And maybe with the God of peace on our side, we'll find our way back to seeing the sun in Assunta. To whom shall we turn? Let us turn to the God whom St. Augustine described as beauty ever ancient, ever new. Thank you so much.